Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to a very long overdue first video for 2022, I even think, video from Shoots with Coops. Lots been going on, guys, been away, had to actually sell everything, new house, everything we'll get into in the next video, but I thought I'd kick this one off with talking about cost-saving tips for shooting film, because as everyone knows, it's gotten ridiculous now. It's actually gotten to the point where if you shoot a lot, it's insane. Insane. Not to mention actually being able to get your hands on the stocks in the first place, which is difficult enough if you shoot a lot of color film. But actually processing costs, film costs, chemical costs, everything is really adding up now. Not to mention the cost of actually getting a lot of the cameras that people like to shoot on these days is even harder. So we will just get this video cracking on and start with some 4 really good tips, film cost saving tips. If you shoot a lot of film like me, this will help put some extra cash in your pocket. Now, number 1, guys, and straight off the bat where I am at now, and that is bulk loading, guys. Now, as everyone knows, I shoot a lot of film, a lot of black and white film, especially Ilford FP4. So it's got to the point now where I think it's become expensive enough. Color, we'll talk about that in a sec, but it's gotten to the point where it's actually so much more cost effective if you shoot a lot of black and white film like me to get into bulk rolling. Now, the way it works out is roughly if I'm buying, and this is Australia costs, I'm buying a 100-foot bulk roll of Ilford FP4, generally FP4 or Delta 400, but FP4, and it's cost me about 130 Australian dollars. Now, when I roll up all the cassettes, and we'll get into that as well, once I roll everything up to 18 to 20 rolls of film, 37 exposures you can pull off a 100-foot bulk roll, it works out roughly to be like $7.80, $7.75, somewhere in that ballpark per roll of film. Now, where that makes a big difference if you're like me and you shoot a lot of black and white film is the cheapest you can sort of find most of those black and white stocks these days is around the $12 mark now. Everything's hit around the 12 Australian. Some are a bit more, but lowest is you're looking at like $11.50 to $12.50 per roll of roughly 100 to 400 speed black and white film, excluding Tri-X and T-Max, which are pretty damn expensive. So bulk loading can save you, let's just say roughly $4 to $5. Let's just say $5 per roll, it can actually save you. So if you're shooting a lot like me, 2, 3, 4 rolls of black and white film a week, documenting everything, street photography, family stuff, all the, surf photography, that sort of environment stuff, it really adds up being able to save $4 to $5 per roll, and I really think bulk rolling is the way to go. Now, it segues on to the next point, and that is the bulk loader itself, because obviously you're not just going to start bulk loading film, there is some setup cost, so to speak. Now, each bulk loader, this is a day roll. These brand new are anywhere from 100 to 120 Australian dollars. Now, if you're like me, just wait a bit, like I did. I bought this before I was thinking 100% keen on bulk loading. I paid $50 second hand for it in great condition. If you can find one second hand, I honestly recommend looking around, it's going to save you some money, or roughly it's about $100 brand new. And then as far as cassettes go, do not buy the reusable ones. The best thing to do is actually head down to your local lab. My local lab here, Silver Halide, Amy and Alex run that joint. Love those guys. I just go down and see them and just go and grab a handful of rolls they've got a huge cardboard box with all the rolls from the developing machines. Any lab will give them to you for free, guys. I never charge money for them because at least that way they're getting recycled or getting one more use instead of ending up in the bin. Now, as far as color and bulk loading, there's really only 3 options, and that is Kodak Vision film, so 800 tungsten, 250D, and 50D. That's it. Pretty much you're not getting anything else. Now, it's got Remjet. To be perfectly honest, I think 250D, which is now Cinestill 400D, maybe we'll talk about that in another video. Honestly, you're better off shooting that film with the Remjet and getting it processed in ECN2. The results are really, really spectacular if you do it the correct way instead of cross-processing with C41 at home and then rubbing the Remjet off and that sort of thing. I mean, there's a couple places, even in Perth here, that do ECN2 processing. So if you're shooting a lot of color, you seriously, honestly should stop buying expensive Kodak portrait and everything else. bulk load the vision stock, find a lab that can do ECN2, and the results are going to be even better, on par or even better than what you get out of the portrait stock. And that would be my go-to if I shot a lot of color. And I am in the midst of getting a roll, a second bulk loader, and some vision, so I can have some go-to color as well. Next cost-saving tip, guys, is an easy one that everyone talks about, and that's scanning your film at home. Now, there's two options we've got to go on here. Now, one, DSLR scanning that everyone talks about these days. That seems to be sort of the best way to go about it if you're at home, or a dedicated 35 or 120 scanner, which is what I have. I have a dedicated 35mm scanner because I'm not shooting much medium format these days, but I shoot a lot of 35, which is why I've had that scanner. I've done videos on that Pacific Image Prime film scanner before. Now, at this point in time, guys, that cost me, with express shipping from B&H Photo in the States, when I bought it, it was 800, just over 800 Australian dollars. It's paid for itself twice, all right? So it's essentially, it paid for itself, and then it saved me another it's actually probably saved me another $1,000 at this point in the costs I would have paid to get film scanned at the lab. So if you look at the difference between, just say, straight develop and scan, that cost difference has saved me over, what's the machine pay for itself? Probably another $1,000, the amount of film I shoot. So honestly, a dedicated machine is the way to go if you want to save a lot of money, because that is a huge saving. Seriously, guys, that's a medium format camera. In 2 years of the cost savings, that's so much extra film I can buy, money I can put elsewhere. Buy a new surfboard, which I pretty much did buy myself a new surfboard with the savings from that, to be honest. The other way to go is DSLR scanning, which is very, very popular these days. Now, if you want to save money, getting into DSLR scanning can be just as expensive, because when you look at the really good negative carrier setups, like the stuff from Negative Supply, the stuff's amazingly well built. It's billet aircraft aluminium. It's great stuff. They're great machines, except if you actually look at the prices of what it's going to cost you, it's very expensive. You got cheaper options like the Valoi, which I think my buddy Hashim over at Pushing Film, I'm pretty sure Hashim uses the Valoi system a fair bit. So I might link a video down below from his review of that, because that's a good way to get into. But if you want to go real cheap, guys, check this out. This is a 120 film holder. This will do 645 or 6x6. So this is $20. 3D printed, $20. Film feeds in there, comes out the other end. If you want to go cheap, guys, you can go cheap. There's so many 3D printing places these days. You can pull plans for this, and I've seen it. There's heaps of 3D printed film holders out there. You can pull the plans off the web and go and see a local 3D printing shop and get them to print it for you. Even another way to save costs. Now, the only other thing is the light. You're going to need a really high CRI light for DSLR scanning, and there is no way around that. You can get things like, I have a Kaiser Slim Light Pano light table for viewing negatives and muck and random. I've had this for years. Something like that works. Or you can get a really good quality video light, which I have one sitting on top of the camera filming me right now. Things like that are unavoidable costs, because you're going to get crap results if you're using a crap light to illuminate your negatives. So that's just one of those things. But again, the amount of money you can save by scanning all your film home, even if you can just get the lab to develop your film. Now, generally most labs around Australia, from what I gather, it's about $10 to $12 for development only. But then with scans, it can go in excess of $20. So even if you're getting basic scans, and let's say that's $18, if you save $5 per roll of film on scanning it yourself and you shoot a lot, the costs really do add up. The savings add up, I should say, and it's a lot of money you can invest in shooting more film, buy more rolls of film, because it's just getting so much more expensive. Next is an easy one, guys, developing at home. So I've been developing at home for years and years and years, guys. I'm lucky I've got one of these old school Patterson tanks that actually takes up to 5 reels of 35 or 3 120 rolls at a time. I've actually used it so much and dropped it. It's got a crack on it now. I've had to tape it up, unfortunately. But developing at home really, really saves costs. The reason I got into developing black and white mostly at home was because at the time, the local lab, this is before, Silver Halide I was just talking about. Well, years and years before the guys opened up shop. The local main lab here was charging about $30 to develop and scan a roll of black and white film. And I really wanted to shoot black and white, but I did not want to spend that much money on developing costs. So the way I figured it, and it's pretty much holds true now, if you're going to shoot a lot of black and white film, it costs you 75 Australian dollars. I mean, convert where you are. So $75 for me to get a bottle of developer, bottle of fixer, and a bottle of stop bath. You can get photo flow, but you can just use a bit of dish soap as well. It works just as good. But a bottle of photo flow, I think, is another $15 on top of that. Now, there are lots of these. You wouldn't believe it. There are lots of these for sale all the time, second-hand ones. You don't need to go and buy brand new expensive ones. What I always see on Gumtree, Facebook Marketplace, is generally older people, so it might be people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, or kids that have found their parents' or grandparents' stash of developing stuff, and they always just stick it on for sale. Now, you got to search very broad terms like dark room, or dark room equipment or things like that, because it's never gonna. If you type in Patterson development tank reels, you probably won't get any hits. But regardless, I see secondhand stuff all the time. I got this one off a bloke here in town. I didn't buy this because this is an old one. You can't even get these anymore. But going that route, yes, again, you do have to spend the initial setup costs of getting some chems, getting a tank, reels. You don't need to get film clips to hang things up. I just use a coat hanger and pegs, and I have for years off my shower head. You don't need to get all the little bits and pieces. A film squeegee, but definitely is a good piece of kit to get with that if you plan on developing at home. But you can save so much money. So off that, let's say $85 worth of chemicals, I can develop up to 20 rolls of black and white film at home. And that is a massive, massive, massive saving. And the same thing goes for color, guys. Yes, you need to get a couple extra things like the bottles to hold the color chemicals in. But these days, the Cinestill do a really cheap CS41, their C41 developing powder kit. It's about $65. And I think generally with most of those, from memory when I used to use the Tentanol kit, so you could develop about 20 rolls before the chems sort of a bit, expired or that, don't work as well anymore. Then you kind of have to add an extra 10 seconds, 30 seconds to development. Anyway, we get into that another time. But that is another way to save a lot of money if you're shooting a lot of color film. Still just develop at home. It's just as easy as black and white. You just got to control your temperature. That's the only real variable, is keeping those chems at the right temperature at 38 degrees. And then again, if you don't have a scanner, then take your film to the lab to get them to scan it, and you can save a lot more money that way. Another one that I'm iffy on, because I don't do it, but I see a lot of it out there, and I don't shoot it, but it seems to be a good way if you're really desperate, is buying expired film, guys. I see guys selling bulk lots of film all the time. Every now and then an ad will pop up and someone's selling 20 or 30 rolls that they've had in their freezer for 10 or 15 years, or they thought they would get through it, but they never did, and they've decided, okay, it's time to, I'll sell it on to someone else. But expired film is another way to go to save money, guys. Generally, you're paying about 50 to 60% of the cost of what a new roll of film would cost. So sometimes you can get lucky. Like a friend of mine here, she was selling, I didn't buy it because I'm not a huge slide film guy, but she was selling a 100-foot bulk roll of expired Fuji Provia, 400, I'm not a big slide man, but if I was, I probably would have bought that off her and bulk loaded all that. I see people all the time dropping, expired, the old school expired Portra VC, NC rolls for 120. And that is a really good route to go, because it's just really simple. Generally, for every 10 years, you expose one extra stop of light. But the only gamble, and that's why I say I'm not too sure because I don't do it, is because we never really know how that film was stored. Unless that person bought it and stuck it in their freezer at the expiry date, personally, and that you personally know that person and they're not lying to you. Sometimes it's really, really hard to tell whether or not that film was stored correctly, and that leads to some pretty funky results. If the film's been stored correctly and chucked in the freezer, and you just add one extra stop on your exposure for every 10 years, it's generally good as gold. Last film cost saving tip, and this one's going to be a little bit controversial because y'all don't want to hear it. Stop buying expensive film cameras, guys. You want to save money and shoot more film? Stop buying expensive film cameras. It's got to the point now where a Leica M6, well, my first one I bought cost $1,200. $1,200. Now they're $4,000. I mean, the amount of film you can buy for that, the amount of developing, everything else that you could do with that. Just stop buying expensive film cameras. Now, I've done a quick Google and Facebook Gumtree and Facebook Marketplace search this morning. Now, alternatives. I have found I found a Nikon FE with a 50mm 1.8D lens for $400. Sorry, Nikon FE2. 0.02 of a second, exposure lock. It's got all the features, everything you could possibly need for $400. I found a Nikon F50, F60 with two lenses, a 28 to 80 and then a 70 to 200 zoom. Older Nikon kits for $100. You know, and I also found a Canon AE1 with a 51.4 for $280. You know, these are great cameras. All the Canon FD lenses are great. All the Nikon AIS lenses, they're all great. All those older cameras, they're fantastic. You really don't need anything more than that. It's just vanity wanting or desire wanting the more expensive cameras. I don't have any expensive cameras anymore, believe it or not. I'd sell them all, and that's the next video we'll talk about. But again, guys, nobody cares about what camera you have except other film photographers. Nobody cares. Nobody cares if you're shooting. The only way anyone knows what camera you're using is because you tag Leica M6, you tag Mamiya 7, you tag Hasselblad 500cm in your Instagram hashtags. Otherwise, nobody could honestly care less. And you'll find that the guys with the biggest Instagram followings and the really good photographers out there, like some of the people I follow that just shoot amazing surf, lifestyle, my sort of stuff, there's no hashtags referring to gear whatsoever. You wouldn't even know what gear they shoot unless you send them a DM and ask them. So that's the last tip, guys. Save your money, stop buying expensive film cameras, and actually put that money into shooting film and getting to become a better photographer. All right, guys, that does it for today. That went a little bit longer than anticipated, so thanks for sticking around if you made it to the end. I have pipeline videos coming because I'm finally in a new house, new studio, everything's set up, ready to go. I had to sell everything, and now I've had to buy everything again, but that'll be the next video we cover. So if you're interested in what happens when life gives you lemons and you got to sell all your camera gears, tune into the next episode. Until then, I'll see you guys later.